It is a tiny law that's had a huge impact on the internet as we know it. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle want to change the way the law works, affecting how content is moderated online. So what exactly is Section 230? NBC News' Jane Timm and David Ingram explain.
So Section 230 is the piece of law that says the websites aren't responsible for the content that's posted on there. So if I write something on Yelp, it's not Yelp's fault. But it does allow Yelp to moderate, to try and filter out profanity, to have a terms and service and try and create the community they want. When this law was written on the books in 1996, the idea was to give some sort of incentive for internet providers and websites and tech companies to have some rules of the road. But they weren't going to make them responsible for it, because previous law had actually said if you moderate your content, you're responsible for it. You're part of the creators. And this law was designed to essentially take the disincentive away. So Section 230 reads, all 26 words of it, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. That's really dense, but basically it just says if I write something on the internet, it's my fault, not the person whose website I'm writing on. Now, that was perceived by many courts to essentially take all responsibility away from tech companies for what's on the internet. And that's created the internet as we know it, a bastion of free speech, consumer reviews, blogs, websites, everything. Now, a growing number of lawmakers have zeroed in on this little piece of law, this 26 words, as something they want to go after. Democrats want tighter restrictions on the internet, more regulation on the content that is going out there. They say it's something that has created violence on the internet, that people are becoming radicalized on the internet. Now, Republicans have zeroed in on a different part of the law. The part of the law that says that you can moderate the content and you're still not responsible for it. That moderation, they don't like that. And they think that tech companies are moderating against them and that the internet is biased against conservatives. There's a really pervasive myth about Section 230, and that's that it requires neutrality. To hear Washington, D.C. and a bunch of Republican politicians talk about it, the law essentially requires neutrality and therefore gives protections to tech companies who aren't biased. One of the early preambles of the law talks about the diversity of ideas, but nothing in the law requires neutrality. It doesn't actually say you have to be neutral. It simply says you can make your own rules for the web, and that's fine. Now, some Democrats want more moderation and more regulation of content on the internet. Presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke has proposed changing some of these regulations for companies that he says don't crack down on hate speech and violence and radicalization online. My colleague David Ingram and I actually talked to a lot of different experts, industry leaders, one of the Republicans who wrote the law years ago, who's since retired from Congress, and people said, you know, you're talking about how you want to change this, how you want to use this as a bargaining chip to try and get something out of tech companies who have a whole lot of power, but no one seems to have any good solutions. One of the proposed solutions by Senator Josh Hawley would actually put the FTC in charge of the internet, in charge of overseeing the internet's moderation and neutrality. That would overwhelm federal resources, a lot of people told us. And how is the FTC going to review everything on the internet? Part of the reason that the power was put in the hands of the tech companies is that the government doesn't have the ability or the manpower to review everything on the internet. The tech companies are the ones who have the best shot at trying to review some of this. Some experts actually said if you got rid of Section 230, you'd have sort of two polar opposites. You either have an incredibly moderated internet that sort of looked more like a magazine, or you'd have a internet with no rules at all that would look more like 8chan, and there'd be a lot of nudity, profanity, violence. Tech companies, unsurprisingly, quite like Section 230. It gives them a lot of power and a lot of freedom. But one of the things that experts told us is that if you got rid of Section 230 and user-generated content stopped being something that was not a huge liability to publish, it would completely upend the business models of things like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube that depend on user-generated content. Now, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have gotten much more interested in how the law regulates the internet in recent years, but it really depends on what the actual law will say. So 26 words from 1996 may not be the most savvy, but they are the law of the land now. And until we see actual proposals, experts say it's just too much to know what the internet would look like under a new set of regulations.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here. And click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.